All right, we're live. Hi, hello. Hello, 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 hello. Greetings, and I am your hostess, Prophetess Davina Stallworth with Divine Intervention, and I am here to do, shift you into your destiny. Hi, today we have a special guest with us today. His name is Adventurous. Raise up, yay! I am so excited to have you here today. He has done so much. Okay, as you can see, I have a list of some of the things that he's done and some of the questions that we're going to ask. But here's the thing today, our purpose is to encourage you because we know what's going on in the world. We don't deny it. However, we need a message of hope. We need a message that says we can do the impossible. It's possible to do the impossible. Right, Ray? Is that right?
It is. I
Okay.
believe it. You
So
know?
we are, and everybody knows if you watch this show for any time, everybody knows that I'm a firm believer that there is a champion in you. And so that is my job is to bring you hope, to encourage you. So today our special guest, Mr. Ray Zahab, is an adventurer. He's an author. He's a world class runner. I don't think there's anybody in his class. I don't think
Oh, there's plenty. There's plenty.
he is the
There's
creator
plenty.
of impossible to possible. So, if you don't mind, I would like to open with a quick prayer, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so Father, in the name of Jesus, we give you glory, we give you honor, and we thank you for this opportunity, Lord, to bring you glory and to bring hope to people that feel that they're hopeless, those that are depressed, those that are down and out. And we thank you, Lord God, today for our guest. I ask you, Lord, to bless the work of his hands and his household and all that concerns him. For we are truly grateful, Lord, that you opened the door for him to be here because now is the perfect time. So in Jesus' name. So here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. So Ray, if may I call you Ray or would you prefer
Absolutely. Whatever else, I'll go with anything. That guy,
that
you
guy?
know,
Okay.
that guy over there.
I'm not gonna don't start, okay? Just don't start. Anyway, so we have a few questions. What I would really, really like to know before you became an adventurer, what was your life like? What was the reason why you began to run? Would you mind sharing that with us today?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I came to running late in my life. So I'm 51 years old, and I didn't start running until I was 35. And prior to that, in my late 20s into turning 30, I was a pretty unhealthy guy. I was a pack a day smoker,
Mhm.
um, you know, more or less sedentary guy who just was, I think, as unhealthy outside as I was on the inside, meaning, I just was a very unhappy person. And
Mhm.
so, I had nothing in my life that I was really, passionate about or anything that I uh, really took any great pleasure in. It just,
Mhm.
so I was just in sort of a self-destructive period of my life, and that's what I
Mhm.
was doing before. And all I really wanted was to feel like I had a purpose, or feel
Yes.
like I
Yeah.
was doing something, right? That was more than being this fakely outwardly happy person,
Mhm.
inwardly unhappy person. And so
Mhm.
I have a younger brother, my younger brother John, who himself had gone through a life transformation. He was a smoker as well, heavy drinker, like we all were, and he became this Ironman triathlete and climber
Mhm.
and mountain biker, and I saw in him through this transformation someone who became very confident in themselves. And so I thought, wow, maybe if I did the things he did, my life would be different. And that's really where things kind of started. It started with me um, taking that chance that maybe if I followed in his footsteps, things might turn out differently. So look, at the hardest thing I ever did was quit smoking. It took me 3 years, and I say to
Okay.
people, the most difficult things that we face in our lives are very often relative to us as individuals, right? Like you can't compare your situation with anyone else. You're living a specific experience, and that's what you're going through.
Okay.
And so I found it really difficult. It took me 3 years. And when I finally made that shift, uh, everything in my life, everything else in my life started to change,
Wow.
and that sort of led me into the outdoors, and one step led to another. And then I got into the whole ultra running thing, you know?
Okay. So what with okay, so with the running, okay, so you stopped smoking, it took 3 years and now you're running. So how did you start? Now I understand how you started running, but what was your initial program like? Did you start with running like a mile or
Well, so it kind of didn't go that way. So so 2000, I quit smoking, right? New Year's Eve, 99, going in January 1st, 2000. I commit, this is going to be it. And then I start doing all these things that my brother's doing. I start mountain biking, and mountain biking becomes my passion. I
okay.
didn't associate myself with being a runner because all the runners that I would see pictures of, and marathon runners, even my brother, who's much taller and leaner than I am, they looked like what I thought runners looked like. So I just thought, well, I'm not really meant to be a runner.
Mhm.
I ran a handful of times, but I really was passionate about mountain biking. So I really took that on and spent a few years doing that and some adventure racing, which is more multi sport. But it wasn't until I read an article about ultra marathons where I, in this article specifically that I was reading about, was about a specific race called the Yukon Arctic Ultra, which is a 100-mile running race just up the road from you in the Yukon.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, who are these people that can run 100 miles, like, and do it nonstop? And as I'm reading this article, I realized that these people were very much normal, regular, average people. They
Mhm.
weren't running superstars like I had envisioned in my mind. These are people that were willing to take a challenge and push themselves in a way that perhaps they didn't even conceive of before trying this thing that they could, right? And I thought to myself, wow, if you're willing to do this thing that's so hard, you must be learning something really amazing about yourself. So I decided that I would give this race a try, and it would be my very first running race. Was a
Mhm.
100-mile running race in the Yukon, and I had literally just a few months to train for it after reading this article. And I was in good shape from the mountain biking, but
Mhm.
I wasn't in running shape because I wasn't really a runner. But I did the best I could to prepare as best I could with the advice of friends and others. And I showed up at that race with all my gear. With the idea in my mind, I was just going to do the best I could and get through this race as far as I could and go home. Of course, not finishing because there was no way I was going to finish a 100-mile race on my feet.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, a lot of close calls in this race where I almost dropped out, almost quit. But not only did I finish it, I won the race. And I thought to myself, geez, it's not about me somehow discovering that I was a great runner or anything like that. It was that human beings underestimate themselves mentally, physically, and emotionally. And that was very clear to me on that day, that it
Mhm.
wasn't a me thing, it was an us thing.
Yes.
And I knew that from the me perspective, I learned so much about myself in doing that race that that was what I was going to do with the rest of my life. That's all I knew. I didn't know what shape or form it was going to take, or
Mhm.
that I'd be doing the things I'm doing now, but that I would dedicate my life to this and learning, and I would go on to do ultra marathons all over the world.
Wow. I am still actually I am amazed. Now you know I got to talk about the Sahara, right? You know I have to
Absolutely.
talk about
Yeah,
that
for
because
sure.
I am just like complete. Okay, so we're talking. Just wait a hold on for a second. I took notes. I was like, oh my gosh. So let me see. So you did that in 111 days. Is
Yes.
that correct?
4,500
One,
4,500 miles in 111 days.
and that was equivalent to you running. I believe it was said 2 marathons a day.
Well, it was about a marathon and a half a day
Uh
on
huh.
average, but we did many days where we did more than two marathons a day. Many days out there.
So okay, because I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. What was that like? What was that like going across this desert? What was that like
Well,
for you?
I so by that point, when we started the Running the Sahara expedition,
Mhm.
and which went through Senegal, Mauritania, Mali, Niger, Libya, and Egypt. When we started that expedition, by that point, I had, in the very short few years that I'd been racing ultramarathons, I had been to Africa a number of times and absolutely fell in love with North Africa, the countries in North Africa, because of course those were the places I was visiting. That's where the races were.
Mhm.
And so I was really excited to see more of the region. I mean, the answer, what it was like. I mean, obviously, it was physically very grueling and difficult. It was a
Mhm.
very difficult race to do, or race expedition to do.
Mhm.
But more than that, it's the things that we were learning um, about life in general as we made
Yeah.
our way across those 6 countries. Like the fact that so many people on this planet have lack of access to clean drinking water. I mean, it
Yes.
was
Yes.
just
Mhm.
wild. And to be in countries like Niger and Mali that truly, from an economic perspective, at the time, 06, 07, and I'm sure things haven't changed much. From an economic perspective, people had so very little in comparison to the lavish lifestyles that we live in the West. Yet
Mhm.
people were so generous and so kind and giving. We would go into communities, run through communities, super remote communities,
Mhm.
and we'd be running with these kids who would just be kind of hanging out around the outside of these communities. And we're running through these towns, and these kids are saying, "Oh, that's my school. That's my mom. I'm going to be a teacher when I grow up. Whatever. I'm going to be a doctor." And they were all things that kids in Canada or the United States that I run with, they all say very similar things, right? And it was
Mhm.
becoming very quickly a lesson in how, although we were living in these two vastly different worlds,
Mhm.
um, we had so much in common. We
Mhm.
have so much in common. But anyhow, the elders in these communities would insist that we must stay and eat. They would feed us
Mhm.
because the Sahara is a dangerous and desolate place.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
we would stay, and I never knew, like, what are we going to eat? What are we going to eat? I had some of the best tomatoes I ever had in my life. I've told that story so many times, but it's true.
Mhm.
The best tomatoes I've ever had, grown in the sand by people who had
Wow.
adapted to their environment
Mhm.
and were agricultural geniuses, right? And
Yeah.
we're happy because we were happy. Like the generosity, the pureness of the joy and the generosity um was just incredible. It was like actually it was like heavy. It was a heavy feeling because I thought to myself, wow, people are so good. And in it's the thing I've learned from all the expeditions I've done to remote parts of the world where you're meeting people from vastly different cultures and everything. People are just generally really good. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
I
and
agree.
generous.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, yeah, of
Agree.
course you got your bad apples, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of really good people out there.
Wow, that is so good to hear, especially with today's society. It's good to hear. Now, because of the things that I do and the things that you do, I will in no ways compare them. However, I believe that we always try to, the 99.9% of the time, we are firm believers that there is good in people. And so we always try to find the best in people. And so that's how we live our lives. And I find that I can see clearer when I expect the best. Even if I'm disappointed, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be hurt or I'm going to turn into that hurt and become that pain that I experienced because somebody hurt me. But I find that I can take the love that I have in my heart, and then even if it's not received or wanted, I can always give it to somebody else because there's always somebody out there who needs a good word, a hug, or just a simple hello. Now, okay, so we're gonna continue on because I can go off on that one. But anyway, so
It's great.
okay, so woo, um, hold on for a second because I'm looking at my questions and I'm like trying to figure out where to go because I'm really, really, I don't want to let you go because this is just so much fun and we're just getting started. So now what really got me, you said basically what I'm hearing you saying, it's about the mentality and your mindset. So because you had to think beyond what your physical body was going through, and so how did you prepare your mind beforehand, or was it something as you continued to go through the process of going across the Sahara and other things that you've done? Do you prepare your mind, and what are some of the things that you tell yourself when you feel like I'm going to give up. I'm tired. My legs hurt. My heart hurts. My arms hurt. This is too heavy. Da 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 da. It's too cold. It's too hot. What are some of the things or the ways that you prepare your mind to continue with your task at hand?
Well, it's interesting. Things have sort of changed over the years, and I'm at a point now where on my expeditions, I've done well over 10,000 miles. I've ran across
Mhm.
deserts and
Mhm.
and Arctic landscapes and all
Yes.
that. You know, I connect a lot of my expeditions with classrooms, and
Okay.
so schools follow along with my
Mhm.
trips, and I just, I'm in a position where now I kind of feel like I want uh it- students and people to feel authenticity in what it is that I'm feeling and seeing.
Mhm.
So my philosophy has always been to try and move on my expeditions fast and light. Um, so, but at the same time, you know, I, in that process of doing things that way, it's physically very difficult, obviously. And on the days when I think, wow, geez, can I keep going? Or there's so many factors, variables that come into play that can be game changers or game enders. I mean, there's so many reasons you could come across a mountain or a canyon or be in a
Yeah. Yeah.
snowstorm or something that could finish. And I think it's the drive to continue to share the story
Mhm.
with the schools that are following. It's such a huge
Yeah.
thing for me. I get so excited about what's around the bend, what's around the next mountain, that I can't wait to find out for myself what's there, who might be there if there is, if I'm in a region that's inhabited, or what wildlife I may see, and what stories can I tell.
I
And
love.
so it becomes about more than just the point A to point B thing, you know?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
really it's transcended that a long time ago. It's no longer about that for me.
Mhm.
Although obviously I want to get to point B, it's not the be all and end all anymore. It's the journey,
Yes.
more than anything.
Yes, sir. That's excellent. It's about the journey, and is life not a journey that we take every day? We can either choose to play along, or we can choose to get out. And
Yeah.
I've talked to numerous. I've talked to people that are fighters that are. Let me see if I can say this word. Perseverers. They continue to go on in spite of being disabled or having some of the hardest odds against them, but they fight to continue. When we're talking PTSD, we're talking about attempted suicide. We're talking about things like that. But what really, really got me, there's two things that I'm learning about people, and I feel that I'll always be learning about people through their stories, through what they, of course, what they go through and who they are, is that their mindset was, I am not going to quit. And as they begin to focus on not only, what they were going through, but how can I help somebody else get through what I've been through. So what I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that what I go through and what I do is not for me, but it's for a whole new generation or people who need to hear stories or know that there are challenges in life, but we don't have to stay in that. And even if we're in a situation or a condition where we can't change, we can always find something good about what we're in or what we're going through. Is that what
Yeah,
you?
I think all of that is like correct, but I think we get to a point where in our lives I mean, look at it, the reality is we have one trip on the planet. That's how much.
Mhm.
It's not like a video game. There's no three. There's no re. You don't have three chances.
Mhm.
You have one life, and so
Mhm.
in that life, you want to challenge yourself and
Mhm.
find ways and things that you can derive a certain amount of passion from. I mean,
Right.
that's the reality, no matter what it is. And it's not that one thing is greater than the other.
Right.
It can be in your work, it can be in your hobbies, it can be in your family, it can be in anything. but it's
Mm-hmm.
finding what that is, right? And
Right.
I think it's something that um, has to be almost, it becomes almost instinctive. It becomes a new reality for you when those things are uh, apparent, when they're going to be real. An analogy is, because you're very faith based, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have true faith, you don't need proof for your faith. You have faith or you don't. You have
Right.
to be all in. There's no partway faith, right? You're all in or you're
Are you
out.
right?
And life, in a lot of ways, I mean, I believe in karma as well. I believe in the energy that we put out there,
Mm-hmm.
over time. Even if we're not looking for it to reciprocate back to us, it does come back. But
Mm-hmm.
we spend a lot of time in life identifying the things in our day to day that are negative, and that are obviously, sometimes, I mean, look at some people got a really heavy load, and it's very hard to
Mm-hmm.
find that even small bright spot in a day.
Mm-hmm.
But initially, when I first made my transition from my past life to the life that I'm living now, I remember very clearly being a generally unhappy person. So the glass was half empty, so to speak. Like everything had sort of a gray tinge to it. You know, um, I used this analogy the other day on a podcast that I was being interviewed on, and it was kind of like, if I woke up and it was cloudy, I'd be like, oh, great. Another cloudy day. It's not going to be sunny.
Yeah.
Now, if I wake up and it's a cloudy day, I'm more apt to think, well, at least it won't be so hot today, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that subtle change.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
remember that initial, uh, when I going from being unhappy to being happy took a lot of work. I
Yeah.
had to
It works.
retrain
Yeah.
myself to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've suggested to people during COVID, when we've all been stuck at home and all that stuff, is, it'll drive you nuts with the uncertainty, not knowing what's going to happen next week, let alone next month. And then,
Right.
and it's
Mm-hmm.
very easy to create a mountain of negative energy and bad stuff and predictions, and
Mm-hmm.
or instead, and it's something that my wife taught our daughters, is to identify three things during the day,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that we're appreciative of. And so for me, every night before I fall asleep, I think of three things, three little things. It could be something really small that happened that day, um, that was a good thing. It doesn't matter what it is, how insignificant it might seem. It's the purpose, it's the exercise in identifying it
Mm-hmm.
that makes us more willing and able to identify when positive things happen, you know?
Mm-hmm. Wow. I like that. Wow. And I have a similar thing that I do. It's called being grateful. And then just thinking, for me, thanking God for simply like being able to get up and being able to move on my own or having a roof over my head. For me, it's about being grateful. And I like what you just said. That was really, really good. So let's talk about impossible to impossible. Let's talk about that. Now,
Impossible to possible.
yeah, what did I say?
You said impossible to impossible, which makes absolutely no sense. Think about it. If it's impossible, why would you make it even more impossible? That would be like I guess it could be the ultimate challenge.
Okay, so impossible to possible. I wrote it down correctly, but I read it incorrectly. So what is impossible to possible, and how did that come into being?
So my wife and I and my best friend Bob decided that we were going to start this organization called Impossible to Possible, I2P for short.
Yes.
And the goal of this organization, we started this after the running of the Sahara expedition. And
Mhm.
the goal of it, Davina, was very straightforward. It was to take young people, 16 to 21 years of age, more or less, that's the age range,
Mhm.
on expeditions of their own all over the world, and expeditions that would be modeled on my own expeditions, but for obviously a much shorter time. Like they go for a week to 10 days at a time. and they run across a specific region of the planet, and then they teach a subject about the area that they're in with schools
Yeah.
all over the world who are
Mhm.
following along, right? So we'll get thousands of schools patched in on a live website while our youth ambassadors are running, across an area, and they collaborate with teachers and professors and content creators while on expedition to share a subject. So, for example, we took 4 youth to. I'm just thinking we have so many examples. We've done 15 of these things to the Amazon jungle, and we studied biodiversity. So,
Mhm.
trekking from one indigenous community to the next, learning about biodiversity from the indigenous peoples that live in the Amazon, and then each day answering students' questions about the biodiversity of that region, and then our youth ambassadors getting the answers from the indigenous people, and then replying back, stuff like that. And so all of the programs are 100% free.
Okay. Okay.
And my expeditions, going back to an earlier question that you asked, well, what keeps me going? My expeditions are used as a way to help fundraise for our youth expeditions.
Okay.
So if I do an expedition and I'm able to attract sponsorship, a lot of that funding also goes into Impossible to Possible.
Okay.
And
I
so
like.
that's how we keep the expeditions free. And so I'm a volunteer with Impossible to Possible, and it's
Mhm.
so is my wife, and it's something that we love to do. And we do these youth expeditions and give these kids an opportunity to be peer to peer with students in classrooms, like heroes, but for something that's really cool, and learn about a subject at the same time.
So I love it. It's amazing. I love kids. I really do love kids. So how could I get something like that with what you do? How could I bring what you do to my area for the children, for the teens in high schools and elementary schools here? How could I do that?
Well, so for starters, all of the youth expeditions, doesn't matter where the schools are, they can patch in, and it doesn't cost them anything. We have tons of schools all over the world. So when obviously we had a youth expedition planned for the end of May. It was going to be in Southern California in the San Jacinto Mountains, studying. I think it was. I'd have to check, but I think it was ecology of the region or something like that.
Mhm.
And it's, when it goes live, schools are made aware if they follow our social media and that sort of thing, and then they begin following the expedition on the website, and all the resources are on the website. And we're going to be on Facebook Live at this time on this day and during the expedition, so students and schools be on there to ask your questions of our youth ambassadors, that kind of thing. So it's very easy to be involved. It's funny that you mentioned it, because you're in Alaska, obviously. And we are planning down the road, perhaps even in 2021, a youth expedition to Alaska, but we haven't been able to firm up any details. So that could be a whole other way, you know?
Mhm. Wow. Oh my gosh, really? So where do you have an idea where?
Well, yeah, but we can't say, because then it's
Okay,
then it's not a surprise, and we always make it a surprise, you
okay,
know?
I understand it. So I'll be looking out for you guys because I'm interested now. I'm not the trekkie kind of person. I'm not an outdoors kind of person. I'm a gardener. I'll go out and do yard work and I'll go walking. So let's just say, so I'm going to another end of a spectrum. So for us that are older, so how do we get into, let's say we want to start doing something a little bit more adventurous. When I started working my current position, I actually went hiking for the first time up a very steep mountain. I actually wrote a story about it. It was not good for me. However, if somebody wanted to go and start doing something, and let's say, like I said, they're older, like me, and you're not, we're, let's say we're not really super athletic. We have a little athleticism, but we're not out there. Do you have any recommendations for people like me who want to start, who want to get in shape, who want to lose some weight, and who
Yeah,
want to get healthier?
absolutely. I think the most important thing is to not be thinking in one's mind
Mhm.
that they're going to summit that mountain in a day, or that they're going to build Rome in a day. You know what I mean? You have to really keep it the goals legit and small,
Okay.
right? And movement is a good thing, right? So if somebody said to me, I want to run a marathon and I've never ran before, but I've got this idea. I've turned 50 and I want to run a marathon. What should I do? Do I get some running shoes and start running right away? I say, no, you know what you do? You find the shoes, obviously, and the gear that's going to work for you. So that aside, and you go for a walk. Go for a walk.
Yes.
That's how you start. And you get used to consistently walking every day, 30 minutes a day, and then you start to build a couple minutes of running in, a couple
Right.
minutes of walking, a couple minutes of running. You get the picture. But people, they feel, another big one I get is, well, I work all the time. I don't have any time to exercise. So what's the point? I say, you get 10 minutes earlier. 10 minutes of movement is better
Yeah.
than 0 minutes of movement.
Right.
5 minutes of movement is better than 0 minutes of movement and can drastically improve your overall health. So, the answer is, don't minimize in one's mind those smaller, more achievable goals that pretty much anyone can make time for.
Wow, that's really good. I I am just so happy that you joined us today. But I do have a couple more questions, and
Yeah.
one of them is, so can you tell? Would you mind sharing with us? I'm going back to I2P. How many children would you say have benefited from your program?
Well, we've had over 60 youth ambassadors on our expeditions, like physically in all these different remote parts of the world. And
Mhm.
we've had tens of thousands of students involved online from various classrooms all over the world. So exact numbers, I don't know. I mean, I could probably find them, but let's just say a lot of schools and a lot of kids in classrooms. And a
Yeah.
lot of schools that I visit, as part of that program, I visit schools and I speak at schools. I don't charge anything. It's all free. Everything we do with Impossible to Possible is 100% free.
Mhm. Okay. Wow. So, um, I wow. So my mind is just going because this is just absolutely fantastic. And I know I keep saying that, but to me, this is like phenomenal. So I was looking at your Arctic expedition that you did this year,
Mm-hmm.
and I see all the gear and everything. And what? How cold did it get? What was that like? How do you get to do expeditions? Does someone approach you, or did you decide that you're going to do
No,
something?
this one in particular, for example, it's sort of a process over time. And this place that I went to in the Arctic is a place that I love.
Mhm.
It's a place that I really wanted to go to and visit for all, I had visited many times over the years. I'd been in this region of Baffin Island, 9 times I've crossed it. But I wanted to tie together the two regions of the Arctic that I crossed and cross them in January, which
Mhm.
would be peak winter. Because I love experiencing these places, like the hot deserts. I love experiencing them at the hottest time of year, and the cold Arctic regions at the coldest time of year. I want to be in the Arctic in winter and see that sky and experience the extreme cold at that time of year. So it's all about really that, really getting the full, most authentic experience that I can while I'm there. Now, this part of the Arctic, it could get to minus 60 and colder with the winds. So it's very cold, but I'm prepared. I've been doing these things for many years, and I was more or less like self-contained. I had all my gear in my sled, but I was moving fast and I was covering a lot of distance every day. So I was generating a lot of heat. I had
Okay.
everything dialed, all my gear dialed, everything. But it's the same. It's conversely in the hottest places on the planet. It's very difficult to be self-contained and run. So you can't cross a large desert dragging all your water behind you and actually run. You could probably do it walking, but I don't want to just walk. I want to walk. I want to move as fast as I possibly can.
Mhm.
So, I use minimal resupply. So on the hot desert expeditions, I'll be navigating across the desert, and I might get a resupply every 20 or 30 kilometers. And I'm finding my way cross country, across mountains and valleys and gorges and through plateaus and sand dunes and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get my water resupply and I keep on going. And because it's so hot, it's a completely different set of circumstances and planning, and logistics.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So let me ask you another question. So out of all the expeditions that you've done, what would you consider one, your greatest challenge, and two, your best challenge?
Well, that's also an interesting question because I've taken a philosophy and decided that I would take a philosophy that I rarely look back at
Okay.
what I've done so far. And for example, our daughters, Kathy and I, our two daughters are 11 and 9 years old now, and they love to run. They love to ski. They're very good uh, little outdoors people.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife is an amazing ultra runner and has all kinds of awards and medals. And we
Mm-hmm.
don't have any of that stuff up on the walls as well. With mine, I don't have any of the magazine articles or the records or any of that jazz up on the walls. It's all tucked away filing cabinet. I mean, I got some stuff on top of my filing cabinet, but more or less we're trying to let them establish their own identity from what it is that they're doing. Without, they know obviously that what my job is and what it is that I do and etc. But the reason I bring that up is because I try not to define myself by the thing that I think was the greatest crowning achievement or anything. The place I love the most is the Canadian Arctic. I love going back there. It's ironic because I am not fussy about the cold. I much prefer the heat.
Yeah.
I love Death Valley. It's an amazing place. I love being there. But I love Niger in North Africa, and there's so many places that I've loved. The Atacama Desert I've been to multiple times. I just guided a group of clients. I have a guiding company as well, and I guided a group of clients in a region of the Atacama Desert last December, which
Okay.
is just an extraordinary place. And I was so excited to share it with them because it's a place that I love so, so much. So, you know, my favorite place, it's very hard to define. The most difficult days I've spent on expeditions, I would have to say, when I crossed the Atacama Desert solo with limited resupplies in summer 2011, it's the driest place on earth. It's a desert in Chile. Uh, it was so obscenely hot and difficult, and I was burned, and it
Oh.
was just a very difficult project. Navigation was tricky. There was all kinds of issues. That was one of the toughest things I've ever done. And I've spent some really hard days in Death Valley. I crossed with a friend of mine. I crossed Death Valley north to south completely off road, and with the same guy west to east completely off road. And every hour we spent doing those expeditions was just, they don't call it Death Valley by accident.
Yeah.
It's just such a hard and harsh place, especially in the middle of summer.
Oh, in the middle of summer. Oh, wow.
And both those expeditions were in July and August.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, wow. Okay, so you're also an author. Now, I have got to get a copy of your book, and I'm going to get one. Tell me about your book, please. Tell us about your book.
Well, I'd love to send you a copy if I had. I don't have any of my. I wrote two books. I don't have any copies of my
No,
books.
I can.
I don't
I
even
can.
know if they're still in print. But I'm writing another one right now with a friend of mine. A very good friend of mine is writing it with me, and so we're really excited about that. The first two books. One was written for young people, so that they could connect with my story. And the first book, they're both more or less the same thing. They go from, it's basically sort of a biography, if you will, until when I ran across the Sahara. So it goes through
Mhm.
all my races and stuff like that. And then from running the Sahara onward, which is like 15 expeditions plus another 15 youth expeditions, that
Mhm.
book we're writing right now.
Okay, so I will. I will do my best to see if I can find your book because I'm
Yes,
very
and send me a copy of yours. I want to read yours for sure.
yes, I will definitely all I need is your address, so we'll get that offline, but
Yeah.
definitely will read your book. I've been going through your the material that you have, and there's just so much. There's so much, and I want to encourage our viewers to take the time to I want them to know who you are. And I know there's a lot of people out there who know you, but I want people to know what you do, who you are, and I'm gonna say I say the word perse- persevere. You're not a quitter. You're not
But
a quitter.
you can persevere. You
Yeah,
know, like yeah, for sure. Everybody's got it in them
yeah,
to persevere, you know, and
yeah.
be resilient. And I think that that's a hugely important thing. It doesn't matter, you know. uh, I believe in human beings is this natural nature. There's exploration nature. It's gene in every one of us to want to go and explore, and that just applies to life in general, you
Right.
know. And people can follow me on Instagram and Facebook and all the rest of that
Yes,
jazz,
yes,
you know.
yes.
This is
Okay.
obviously I'm there too, and I'm telling stories every day. So
Let me get your can I get your Instagram? Can I get your handles? I'm gonna type them in our comments so I can send it out so people can find you.
yeah,
And
it's just Ray Zahab, and there's a little blue check beside my name, and all three pages: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. Just they all have blue checks beside my name. People will know they got the right page. On Facebook, it's a public page that I use because I find it easier to communicate with people and answer their questions.
okay, I'm just gonna throw this up there. Um, I'm waiting for it to post. So I guess I got one more question for you. What do you see for the future for I2P? And how do you, well, actually, it's two questions. So, what do you see for the future for I2P, and how do you plan on getting there? What is your goals to get to your next goal with I2P? Because I'm very interested in that program.
Well, look at, you know, funding is always a difficult thing for a nonprofit organization. And that's one thing that we've always struggled with since day one is funding the organization. But we get it done every year, you know, we find a way. So a goal for us is definitely to increase our fundraising capacity. These youth expeditions are very expensive to do. Um, and we'd love to have that pressure of worrying. Like, the logistics are very difficult. There's a lot of difficult factors, as you can imagine, to pull together these things with young people. So one thing we don't want to have to worry about is the financial end of it. So that's a goal of ours for sure.
Okay.
Long term, you know, we really over the next year or two are going to be exploring. Although we've done international expeditions all over the world, we want to really explore the lesser known regions, those
Mm-hmm.
jewels of Canada and the US, and really bring young people and classrooms into these places, like the lesser known national parks, for example, in the US. You know, there's so many amazing little places,
Mm-hmm.
pockets that people don't even know about. Same thing in Canada. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's really a big goal for us.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So, do you currently have any expeditions planned for the very near future?
I do have a few expeditions planned, and
Mm-hmm.
so we're working on you know, the youth based ones that were supposed to happen this year, Southern California, San Jacinto
Mm-hmm.
Mountain Range. That's been delayed because of
Okay.
COVID, so we're
Yeah.
waiting to see what we can make happen there. Um, then you know, we're planning. I personally have expeditions planned into next winter, but you know, I'm waiting till everything for certain we can travel and all that stuff before I put it out there, you know, because I'm a big
Of course.
believer once you put it out there, you got to do it, you know. So
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
want to make sure that I can, you know.
Okay. Well, okay, so we're going to wrap this up. And before we go, first and foremost, I want to say thank you. And again, I will try my best to find your book. I got to find it because I'm very interested in what you do. Now, when I say interested, I want to know, um, as we've discussed today as in the interview, is that you have a very sharp mind. You are obviously a very good man, a good father, and a good husband. But what you do for our community is absolutely amazing. And I feel that people need to know about what you do as a person. And so I'm saying all that to say I want to encourage people to support you and your team and I2P impossible to possible. The important thing again is the children. There are a lot of kids out there, even in my own area, that have basically nothing to do. They have a lot of idle time on their hand. And now that they're doing lessons or they were doing lessons online, I think that this would be something that would be absolutely um, great for them to learn and go on adventures basically to expand their mind and to see that, you know what, we can do this. We too can do this and we can be a part of that. But I would like to see parents come alongside and say, hey, I think this is something good for the school. I think this is something that our school could use to help our kids to grow educationally and as well be able to expand their minds because the world is bigger than just what's in front of your face. So,
I
so,
agree.
so I never, I grew up in the like the suburbs or whatever in the inner city, and my life was that area. But if I could take my granddaughter and I could say, look, I want to show you something. I want you to see what's possible for you bigger than what's here in Alaska. And
Mm.
I think that she's 6 years old. But if I could give her that adventure, and I'm not trying to be selfish, but if I could give my granddaughter that kind of adventure at this kind of young age, can you imagine what she
Yeah,
can become when she gets older?
that's the thing, and not to go on here because I know we got to wrap up, but I
Oh,
think the one thing that's key for young people, well, when they can travel again, is to find a way to travel, even if it means doing it, on the most minimal of budget. It doesn't matter, but
mhm.
it's like meeting people from different cultures and
Yeah.
appreciating other people in different cultures
Mhm.
it's the most important thing you can do.
Yeah.
It's the greatest lessons you can take.
Yes, I agree.
So
I agree. Wow. So let's, you know what? I also am a firm believer. Let's start with our kids when they're young. Let's let them
yeah,
see the world. It's bigger than the inner city. It's bigger than a farm. It's bigger than the neighborhood that you live in. Let's show them the world, the good stuff. And bad stuff happens. It's out there. They're going to hear about it. But there are
yeah,
so many treasures, as you said before, that even with your get ready to explore, but I want to show the kids that I deal with, I work with, that I know that the world is bigger than what you're watching on the news. I want to show you something better than that, and I want to show you what's possible and what you can do. So, all that being said, again, we have with us our guest adventurer, Zahab. He is he does so many wonderful things. I can't even begin to list them all. I wrote them out. Y'all want to read my notes? I probably don't. But it has
well,
been such an honor.
thank you for having me on, and it's
Oh,
been great to get to meet you, and I'm sure we're going to continue to communicate and chat, and I love it. I love meeting new people. It's great.
so one day,
I have a
if it,
friend in Alaska now.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, as a matter of truth, because we're really close here. So whenever you come, we have to connect. And
Oh,
I
well, for sure.
really, because I have people, I'm sure, that would love to come. And if it's, you just let me know, and maybe we can set something up where you could just come and talk to us, talk to our kids, because I know a whole bunch of kids that would love to hear your
We'll
stories.
we'll
And
make it
other
happen.
people. But when you come, please, 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 please come. Just let me know. And let's work this out. Let's just make it happen because I want people to
We'll
know
make
you
it.
and I want people to know your stories.
We'll make it happen. Awesome.
Yes. All right. Well, praise God. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and because we're gonna go ahead and close this one, close it out. And as much as I don't want to, but I feel that we've learned a lot. And maybe someday when you get ready to do your next expedition, maybe we could like connect and we could go with you on my show.
All right, let's do it. We'll figure it out. We'll make it happen.
I think that would be absolutely phenomenal. So, hi. Okay. So, everyone, this is Prophetess Davina Stallworth with Divine Intervention with our guest, adventurous Zahab. Wonderful, 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 wonderful person. I pray that we get to see him again on an interview, and maybe we'll get to go on an expedition with him from our computer online. I think we would like that. So, you have a blessed and wonderful, wonderful evening because we're here to bring out the champion in you. So, again, thank you all for joining us tonight, and I hope to see you again on next week. Be blessed and have a good evening. Bye bye.
Bye.